Are we cultivating a sense of hope or promise that their gift is going to have genuine impact? Are we truly painting an image of what the world can look like through this engagement?
Welcome to the Nonprofit Fundraising Exchange, a podcast from IPM Advancement. We believe strong nonprofits can change the world, and our goal with each episode is to bring you insightful conversations with thought leaders from the nonprofit sector. Let's get started.
Welcome, listeners, to a brand new season of the Nonprofit Fundraising Exchange. I'm your host, Rich Frazier.
And I'm your other host, Russ Fanoff.
Hey, Russ.
Hey, Rich.
Nice to see you.
It's nice to see you. It's nice to have a new year upon us, isn't it?
It's 2025. And today, we're going to share with our listeners some of the most valuable lessons learned in 2024 and ways that you, our listeners, can apply those lessons in the coming year.
That's right, Rich. And speaking of the coming year, we have some exciting plans ourselves for the podcast for 2025. This is our 6th year.
Whoa.
And we're going to continue to bring you some cutting edge conversations with smart and innovative nonprofit thought leaders. In addition, we're going to invite guest hosts to interview some of their favorite nonprofit change makers.
We're also going to be experimenting with AI, artificial intelligence, to bring you audio summaries of the most popular white papers in the IPM Advancement Resource Library. And as always, we'd love your feedback. So let us know what you like and what you want to hear more of.
You know what I like, Rich, is that the real Russ is actually taking a nap right now, and I am AI Russ.
I thought you'd looked a little more handsome than normal.
Well, the listeners can't see me, but it's true. So thanks for that. But to your previous point, we would love your feedback, listeners. So let us know what you like. If you'd like to recommend a guest, just send an email to us. Send it to contact@ipmadvancement.com or reach out to us on social media. All of our social media links are in the show notes.
Well, let's dive into today's episode. We invited NPFX guests from the 2024 season to call in with their most valuable nonprofit fundraising lesson they learned this past year. We're going to share their messages and talk about ways you can put their advice into practice.
We're also going to share our own top lessons. So get ready to hear some great tips on donor engagement, the importance of managing data, leveraging your annual fund for major gifts, the value of unrestricted gifts for capacity building, and lots more.
And make sure you listen all the way through, because we've saved a message of inspiration for the end that I think every nonprofit should hear and take to heart.
Excellent. So first, let's hear a pair of messages about the power of simplification through the use of systems and innovative tools like AI.
This is Cherise Floyd from AI Consultants for Nonprofits. The most valuable lesson I'm taking away from my work in 2024 is simplification, empathy, and grace. Nonprofits, it's no secret, are extremely stressed and overwhelmed, and my work coming in to teach a skill like AI, which can be very overwhelming, even though the concept of AI is simple in itself, it still feels overwhelming for a staff or a team whom is already under the weight of its own capacity. And whether that is program capacity or needing to raise more money, because who doesn't need to raise more money? Teaching something like AI needs to be very, very simple for them in order for AI to work for them and not already add to their heavy workload, plates that are full of a lot of things. This insight for me also started to mirror what I'm doing in my own business, is that in order to really reduce burnout and free up time to do the work that we love, simplification is important. Simplification for the work that we do, offering that one thing that we're really great at, changing the lives of one person, then the next person, and the next person, and then allowing ourselves to have grace and empathy with ourselves as we're figuring that out. That is the exact mirror that I am seeing to how I will approach 2025 for myself as well. Keep it simple. Understand that we're using technology to save people's sanity and to reduce burnout, and realize that the most important thing that we can do with anybody when we are extending grace is to meet people where they are. And that is the message that I am taking from my work in 2024 that has become a mirror for me, in that empathy and practicality are going to be the foundation of any partnership or any work or any joy that comes from 2025. That to 2024, I say thank you.
Hello, this is Sammy Zoss from Zoss Collaborations. Most valuable lesson I'm taking away from my work in 2024 is the transformative power of systems and automation in small mission-driven businesses, particularly nonprofits. As I've partnered with nonprofits across South Dakota and across the nation, I've seen firsthand how simplifying processes and leveraging tools like AI can not only save time, but amplify impact. This year, I've learned that when you focus on building sustainable systems, whether it's automating repetitive tasks, streamlining workflows, integrating new technologies, softwares, et cetera, it really frees up time for teams to focus on their missions and do what they do best. I think this year's theme is all about how do we optimize mission delivery. This lesson has redefined how I approach my work and inspired me to build solutions that help make people's lives easier, and not just in the short term, but for the long haul. It's been an incredible journey, and I'm excited to carry this forward into the new year. I love to say that my motto is helping good people do good things, and I can think of no better motto to go into 2025 with. Happy holidays, everybody, and thank you so much.
First of all, shout out to Charisse and Sammy. They are two superstars, and we love having them on the podcast. And one thing I want to note is for Charisse, she comes to her approach in her business out of this real genuine need to help people, and just this affinity to really get in the weeds and help people on the ground who are in the trenches and doing this every day. And she knows that AI can be overwhelming, but the way that she comes at it is, listen, just get into it any way you can. Just go ahead and take your first step, and get into it.
The first time Charisse was on our show, I literally wrote down a lot of the resources for AI that she gave us. And it can be overwhelming, but you know what? Don't worry about trying to use everything. You don't have to.
Right.
Use what you can, and use what makes sense for you. Use what you have time for that saves you time and helps you work more effectively.
And it's about using it as a way to reduce burnout and free up time for meaningful work, right? You want to use AI as a tool, like you would Microsoft Office, or like you would any kind of other tool that you have in your toolbox, to help you kind of free up your workload and get rid of some of the kind of menial tasks that you do, so that you can focus on the things that really matter.
And Sammy's motto of helping good people do good things really speaks to the heart of why we invest in systems. It's all about balancing the need for operational efficiency and preserving the human connections that are at the core of our missions. I think that's the biggest takeaway here.
Absolutely.
So our next lesson learned concerns the importance of managing your donor data, and comes from a frequent guest, an important member of the IPM team, and one of my favorite humans in the entire world.
And as you listen, make sure to pay attention to the last point about using your annual fund to identify high capacity donors.
Hi, this is Samantha Timlick, President and CEO of IPM Advancement. The most valuable lesson I'm taking away from my work in 2024 is how critical it is to understand your data and have an expert on staff who can manage it. Some pitfalls to look out for that I've run into over the past year. What records are you using for your donor and your co-op modeling? Make sure you're excluding segments like volunteer non-donors, merchandise purchasers, and other non-direct donations. For example, if you're modeling for direct mail, you really only want to be looking at donors who have given a gift via direct mail in the past. That's going to be the best way to build a lookalike model. Something else, if you're providing direct services, make sure in your database you know how to differentiate between donors and the people you are serving. Make sure you're not fundraising to the people who need your support right now. They can make great donors down the road when they are out of crisis mode, but right now what they need from you is services, not solicitations. Another thing is accurate and timely acknowledgments. They are absolutely critical for donor stewardship, and you've got to have the data in order to produce the letters. These can absolutely make the difference between a one-time donor and someone giving to you again and again. Something else to look out for is over-reliance on your vendors. Having strong vendor partners is critical, and you got to be able to rely on those folks to handle your data accurately and appropriately. But you should also have a clear understanding of what they're doing to your data, how they're doing it, and why they're doing it. You really need a strong data expert on staff who can run queries, pull data, process updates, and conduct ongoing analysis, everything that you really need internally. Even if you have a vendor doing this type of work, it's really important to keep that knowledge and understanding with the organization. It's going to allow you flexibility for producing in-house stuff. It's going to allow you to transition more easily if you choose to disengage with a certain vendor. And it really acts as an important cross-check. This is not something you can just set and forget. And finally, make sure that you are leveraging your annual fund to identify high-capacity donors. There are people who are already giving to your organization with the capability of giving more. So they've got that affinity. You know they've got the capacity. Now it's time to go out, steward them, cultivate them, and solicit them for the larger gifts. And that's the real value of the annual fund. So you want to make sure you're not missing out. So that is my big takeaway from 2024. It's all about the data. Thank you for letting me share my thoughts, and I wish you all a very happy new year.
So, Russ, I love working with Samantha when we have shared clients because she is just a brilliant individual, especially when it comes to annual fund and data management. Understanding your data is not optional. It's foundational. There's so many databases out there that have mixed uses, right? So we've got donors, absolutely. But if you think about service organizations or even membership organizations like museums, those people are not necessarily your donors. So it's absolutely crucial to understand how to make sure our messaging is precise and effective to each of those different types of constituencies.
Yeah, that's right. And I think one of the things that Samantha comes to the work with is this understanding that, as a nonprofit organization, you do have to make choices about what you do with your data. You can only contact X number of people when you go out to, reach out to folks with an appeal. So you have to decide, who are those people most likely to respond. Then in a second step, can you depend on your vendor to make that decision for you? Or do you really have to dig into the data yourself? Work with your vendors so that you can kind of train them and make sure that they understand what you're doing with your data, the reasoning behind why you're making those decisions, and that you can both kind of come to an understanding of how to optimize some of those pulls and things like that. And so Samantha has a great handle on that. And that's one of the things that we try to do with our clients is there needs to be someone in the organization who's a strong data expert, but there also needs to be a good handle on the data on the vendor side.
Yeah. And to her second point there, I don't even know how many times we've hammered this home about timely and accurate thank yous to donors. With donor attrition, anywhere between 50 and 60% of first-time donors are never going to make another gift again. We have to get those acknowledgments and thank yous out the door because it's more than just saying thank you. It's building trust. It's showing appreciation. And it's the first step in getting those second gifts in the door. And those second gifts can build repeat donors and long-time lasting donors for our organizations.
The last thing I want to emphasize with Samantha's feedback for 2024 is the importance of identifying high-capacity donors and the value of stewarding and cultivating them for larger gifts. The annual fund is your opportunity to get people on the file, to do some wealth analysis, to identify those folks who have capacity, and then to go ahead and get them in the pipeline for major gifts and or at least leadership gifts, and then major gifts and maybe even planned gifts, and cultivate them, bring them along, really develop a genuine relationship with those folks. And the annual fund is a great source for that.
Great pipeline building. Absolutely.
Okay, on to the next lesson learned.
I like this one because it's really about stretching oneself and growing your own personal skill set through new experiences to make you more valuable to the people that you serve.
Hi, this is Emily Berry from Miami University. The most valuable lesson I'm taking away from my work in 2024 is the importance of seeking out opportunities to learn and to grow beyond the day-to-day responsibilities of my job. This year has really shown me that it's not enough to just stay within the familiar routines and tasks that come along with my day job. I need to actively look for ways to challenge myself, explore new areas, and just kind of expand my horizons. I've realized that my personal growth, professional fulfillment, and ability to stay truly engaged all depend on stepping outside my comfort zone. That means learning new skills, getting involved in projects that stretch me, like being on a podcast, for example, and building connections with people that I wouldn't normally cross paths with. In doing so, I keep myself energized and inspired, and ultimately that makes me better at what I do. This year, I've learned that growth doesn't just happen. We really have to pursue it, whether it's taking a course, joining a committee, or just being intentional about connecting with others. Maybe it's that monthly happy hour with your coworkers. The key is to stay curious and stay open to opportunities. It's about recognizing that learning is an ongoing journey, and the more that I invest in that journey, the more impactful I can be both in my role and beyond.
I really like what Emily had to say about seeking personal and professional growth as a refreshing reminder that staying engaged and inspired requires stepping out of your comfort zone. It's not just about checking off your task list. It's about actively pursuing opportunities and being curious and learning new things that help us grow. And not just professional growth. I think personal growth and professional success are sort of deeply interconnected, because when you invest in yourself and your personal growth, you're not just enhancing your skills and your knowledge, you're building a stronger foundation for how you show up and how you contribute to your professional life.
I couldn't say it any better, Rich.
Hi, this is Curtis Schmidt, producer of the Nonprofit Fundraising Exchange. If you're a nonprofit professional who has questions about your program, or maybe you feel like you've taken your advocacy, fundraising, or membership effort as far as you can and you need some fresh ideas, then we have a special offer for you today. NPFX podcast listeners can get a free 30-minute consultation with IPM Advancement, no strings attached, when you go to ipmadvancement.com/free. Just enter a few details and an IPM team member will contact you to follow up. It's that easy. That website again is ipmadvancement.com/free. Thanks for listening, and we hope to talk to you soon. Now let's return to the episode.
So before we get to the next audio message, we wanted to read a submission from one of you folks, our NPFX audience.
We received a few submissions from listeners, and we picked this one because it speaks to one of the most important best practices of nonprofit fundraising, which is donor stewardship. And this was submitted by Nicolette Dumais, who is the Constituent Communications Manager at USS Hornet Sea, Air, and Space Museum. And Nicolette wrote, "The most valuable lesson we have learned in 2024 was to lean into making our current supporter base feel valued and indispensable. We sent out updated and rewritten thank you letters every quarter that really helped our donors feel like we were writing personalized messages to them. We also started offering donor-exclusive content that even one-time donors could access if they chose to do so. Because of these few new approaches to direct communication with our supporters, we have seen our donor retention rate grow from 38% to 48% in just 2 years. Our constituent base is much more engaged, and we have seen our average donation increase in amount and timeliness. Focusing on donor stewardship in our strategic plan has made a world of difference for us. We advise any nonprofit to steward past and present donors before diving headfirst into querying new leads.
I love everything about that. I love that she's got stewardship and strategic planning, my favorite S's. The value of donor stewardship, we've already talked about it in this episode, but it doesn't have to be big. And it's not just for big donors and longtime donors. She talks about special content, even for those one-time donors. And as a result, they've seen an increase in donor retention and average gifts. That's huge. And the results that they've seen are huge. Good for you, Nicolette.
Yeah, that's super. And here's the thing. In an organization like Nicolette works for, so I'm making some assumptions here, but she's at USS Hornet Sea, Air, and Space Museum, which I'm assuming is an experiential organization. So that organization has to really strive to make sure that they're not having a transactional relationship with the people that come to them. And by doing these things that are focused on donor stewardship, you're really ensuring that you're not having a transactional relationship with people. And so just the fact that keeping a donor is so much more cost effective than acquiring a new donor, that is just one of the most important things that a nonprofit fundraising professional can do to improve program ROI.
I may have to take a trip out to Alameda, California to the USS Hornet Sea, Air, and Space Museum.
Everybody should do it. Let's go.
Thank you, Nicolette, for writing in. I really appreciate that.
And thanks for listening. So next up is another frequent guest and one of our favorites, and he's elaborating on a marketing concept that he spoke about briefly in episode number 62 when I interviewed him about narrative strategy.
Now, this was a new concept for me, but it's certainly going to show up in my work for our nonprofit clients in 2025.
This is Josh Cronowitz, founder and chief narrative strategist at Odd Duck, a storytelling for social change creative consultancy. 2024 was a pretty wild year for us. I published a book with Roman and Littlefield that hit the USA Today National Bestsellers list. I learned group mindfulness techniques and embodiment at a facilitator's retreat to truly draw the best out of audiences, and led a workshop series on narrative framing for advocacy for change makers throughout the country. So we've had a lot of amazing experiences this year. But I think one of the most valuable lessons I'm taking away from 2024 is actually this concept of epoch marketing, EPOC. It's a term coined by marketer San Pari and stands for every point of contact. But it basically means thinking through every touch point from your initial introduction to a prospect all the way to moving them to being an engaged client or donor, and each step along the way. There are few concepts that, like, when you first encounter them in a book, an article, a podcast, they hit you just right, and this was one of them. I was like, I have to incorporate this into my work, and I brought it to my team immediately. So creating what we call an epic epoch for your clients was just one of those things. A lot of people are familiar with sales funnels or donor engagement funnels, customer journey maps. What my team has traditionally done is what we refer to as story mapping, which identifies your core audiences and the messaging that can help move them to action. But where the epoch approach differs is that it layers in all of these implicit touch points in a value-driven way that actually makes sure everything your organization says is represented in how you conduct yourself. So when I'm coaching clients, I often say, you have to live your story. But an epic epoch is the first sort of blueprint that I've encountered to actually show clients how. So examining how they're represented digitally on their websites or socials, in their marketing material, but also, like, what does your meeting space look like? How is your conduct reflected in your brand values? You're really going deep here. And we also ask our clients to consider the experience they want to create for their donors. What are we hoping they feel in interacting with us? Are we cultivating a sense of hope or promise that their gift is going to have genuine impact? Are we truly painting an image of what the world can look like through this engagement? It encourages us to do what we refer to as creating a culture of story. So that's developing processes and practices within your organization so that everyone, no matter what their role, reflects the brand values of your team and is contributing to them. Ideally, this becomes part of, say, a standing meeting where every week team members have an opportunity to contribute to how the story of your organization is told. So since being introduced to these methods, we've incorporated them into our narrative framework model. We've introduced them to most of our clients, and it has really been a game changer in how they represent their best work to audiences.
So here, Josh discusses this concept of epoch marketing, which is every point of contact and its impact on his work. And so a lot of the times, in our work with nonprofit organizations, we refer to multi-channel marketing, reaching donors and engaging donors across every single way that you have that you can engage them with. But Josh explains the importance of thinking through every single touch point from initial introduction to engagement and really ensuring consistency in messaging and the way that you conduct yourself with that person. And it's influenced the way that he thinks about narrative framework models and his client work. And it feeds into this culture of storytelling, because when you're using storytelling as a way to engage your audience, you want to make sure that the way that you're delivering your stories is consistent across all these channels. It's not something that you can kind of shoot from the hip and just say, you know what, today on social media, we're going to throw out this. And then, next month we've got a direct mail piece and we might try something like this. You really have to sit down and you have to think through at least once, twice a year, maybe even quarterly, what your narrative strategy is going to be, how you're going to approach storytelling with your organization.
What I found really compelling was the emphasis on living your story. And as I interpreted what he shared with us, I relate it back to the leadership training that I got in various jobs. It's not enough to tell your donors, your clients, your constituents about your values. You have to embody them in every aspect of what you do in your operations, from how your website looks to how your staff interacts with your stakeholders, right? It's that approach that creates that cohesive, values-driven experience for donors, clients, constituents, your organization alike. So that's my takeaway from that. And I really appreciate Josh sharing that with us.
Yeah. And I'll say one more thing. You really have to take a donor first mindset when you're thinking through these things. What do you want donors to feel? What do you want them to think? What do you want them to do when they're interacting with the organization? That's really, really important. You have to take yourself out of the mindset of thinking organization first and think donor first. Think about how they're going to engage with your organization from their point of view. And that's a great way to approach your messaging going into 2025.
Really great input from Josh Grunowitz, one of our favorite guests on NPFX.
Shout out to Josh.
Big G.
Chicago.
So our next lesson learned comes from someone we haven't had on the podcast before. One of our guests from last season, Brian Malty, executive director at the Hope and Heal Fund, wanted to participate but couldn't. So he asked if their chief development officer could pinch hit for him.
That's right. And this lesson is one that I think is important, but it doesn't get as much attention as it should. The value of unrestricted funds to a nonprofit organization.
Hi, this is Allie Barron, Chief Development Officer at the Hope and Heal Fund. The most valuable lesson from my work experience in 2024 would be the transformative power of community-driven solutions to address systemic challenges, paired with the critical importance of capacity building support at every level. Through our work here at Hope and Heal Fund, a funder collaborative working to reduce firearm-related injuries, deaths, and trauma, I've seen firsthand how unrestricted support for capacity building can have an exponential impact, from the smallest grassroots initiatives to larger, more established nonprofits. The ability to strengthen internal capacity, whether through staffing, training, technology, infrastructure, enables an organization to not only sustain their current work, but truly to scale their impact strategically. This trust-based approach acknowledges that those closest to the work know truly what their community needs. Unrestricted support doesn't just empower organizations, it unlocks their potential to leverage larger transformative dollars, including public funds, which often require operational readiness or matching resources. The dual focus on community-driven solutions and capacity building ensures that investments have immediate and long-term benefits, creating the foundation for sustained and scalable change. For 2025, we plan to champion fundraising efforts that prioritize unrestricted and capacity building support. By investing in the backbone of our partner organizations, we have the opportunity to help them grow sustainably and scale their solutions and multiply the return on every dollar contributed. In 2025, my goal is to showcase the importance of these investments. I want to help philanthropy and our individual donor base understand that capacity building is not just an overhead cost, it's a vital part of systemic change. And my advice to others would be this: trust the organizations you're supporting. Invest in their capacity to lead and to grow. When we prioritize unrestricted funding and capacity building, we don't just fund the programs, we enable long-term scalable solutions that position these organizations to leverage resources and create enduring and positive change that we want to see in this world.
Allie's message about unrestricted funding is one that I think that every nonprofit leader and fundraiser needs to hear. When we support capacity building, we're really supporting the backbone of sustainability and scalability of an organization, helping that organization grow. And, we're supporting not just the programs, but the people who manage and run those programs.
And I think that fundraisers in some of these organizations are really facing some challenges when they go out to funders who tend to want to direct that funding in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And unrestricted funds are so important because they give the organization the ability to direct the funding where the organization thinks it is best used. So if the organization and its board and its executive director have a vision, they've got a strategic plan, they know the best way to use that money. Even though it might be tough to walk into a funder who has a different vision and who has a big pile of money that they want to give you that has a completely different purpose, it's tough to say, no, I'm sorry, but that just doesn't align with what we want to do.
Yeah.
But a lot of organizations face that challenge.
Yeah. When donors provide unrestricted funding, they're saying, we trust you. We trust you to know what your organization and your community need because you're the ones running the show. You know best. So how do you build that trust, Russ? Stewardship. You show donors and you prove to donors that you're using their money effectively. And the more you can do that, the more they're going to trust you. And that type of trust-based philanthropy unlocks potential. It enables nonprofits to leverage other resources and pursue those big, bold, strategic goals. And I'm a big fan of those big, bold, strategic goals.
Yeah.
So that's why stewardship, and we're going to hammer it home and hammer it home and hammer it home. That's why it's so very stinking important.
Yeah, it's super important. And I think the good news for a lot of organizations out there is more trust out there. And there is more willingness on the part of funders to work with organizations and to at the very least, meet them in the middle and say, you know what, we're going to give you this money. We might put some oversight on it. We might want to work with you closely, but let's work together. Let's have a collaborative relationship. And let's help you do some capacity building and get you to the next step of your organization.
Yeah, really love that. Thank you, Allie.
All right. And we've made it to our final guest contribution.
Also on my list of favorite humans on this earth. This is a message I wish every nonprofit fundraiser and leader would hear. It's about the important role of nonprofits as a safety net for social services and a creative way for nonprofits to remain strong in a challenging fundraising environment.
I'm Beth Silverstein. I am founder of Silverstein Funding Solutions. And this past year has been a really important learning year for me and for the not-for-profits that I've served. What I know to be true going forward is that we are better together. Not-for-profits are the social service delivery mechanism for our country. We have a big job. We're educating, we're providing social services, we're feeding homeless. We are doing so many important things, but the problem is that we're doing them as silos. And in what's going to be a very competitive funding environment going forward, it's going to be really important for us to get smart and to work smarter and to build and focus on our business model. We have to focus on governance. We have to focus on our strategic planning. We have to cast the boldest vision possible. And we have to earn major gift support. There isn't a single donor out there that's going to give to a mediocre project or mediocre vision or to a starving nonprofit. Nonprofits have to get really, really smart about joining forces with other aligned not-for-profits, finding ways to trust each other, to build collaborations and strategic partnerships. So my advice going forward is to think hard about your business model. Think about the work you want to do and how best to do it. And go forth with confidence and with passion.
So, Rich, here's what I love about this. This is about donors and connecting donors to things that they can get excited about and get passionate about.
Yeah. You know what? And she uses all my favorite buzzwords: collaboration, good governance, and strategic, bold thinking. Nonprofits are doing the work that the public and the government sectors cannot or will not do. And often there's overlap in what we do, which leads to redundancy and inefficiency sometimes, right? So collaboration increases that efficiency and also can increase funding from donors and foundations who appreciate increased efficiencies. Yeah?
Absolutely. You have to have these strong collaborations, these strong partnerships, and your business model has to be just tight as a drum.
Running a nonprofit is running a business, and it requires a mindset that embraces fiscal responsibility, bold vision, and a commitment to measurable outcomes. And Beth is absolutely right. Donors won't support mediocrity. They want to invest in organizations that have clear, compelling plans for the future. And that's why I really love strategic plans that have big, bold visions.
Awesome. All right. So, Rich, let's talk takeaways.
Okay.
So it's really takeaways from all of 2024, if you want to get right down to it. And the big thing that I'm taking away from 2024 is, stewardship is so very important. And I think a lot of folks got engaged during the pandemic. We had this influx of new donors for a lot of organizations. And then as everything kind of reopened and things got back to quote unquote a new normal, a lot of nonprofits saw people go away and they were like, what's going on? What's happening? Where are all these donors going? And it snapped a lot of people to attention. And a lot of organizations right now are looking at stewardship finally again, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
Because stewardship is so very important. Again, it is much, much more cost effective to retain donors than it is to go out and get new ones. And for 2025, that is the advice and the recommendation I would give to all our listeners is take a hard look at your stewardship program. Make sure it is not a variable in the way that folks are engaging with your organization.
The sensible thing for me to do here would be to find another follow-up to complement yours, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to align with you and say stewardship, because look at our submissions for this episode, right?
Yeah.
So many of them have gone down that road. Stewardship drives loyalty and growth. It's not just follow-up.
Yep.
It's an ongoing process that builds trust. It deepens engagement. And it can be small gestures like Nicolette shared with us from the USS Hornet. It's exclusive content of recognition. It can have big impacts. It can increase retention and it can increase donor giving. But I'm also going to be additive here. I'm going to say embrace bold and strategic leadership, good governance, strategic planning, and don't be timid. Don't play it safe. Get into your strategic plan. If you don't have a strategic plan, then get into that boardroom and create that strategic plan. Think about where you want to be 3-5 years from now. Think boldly, put a plan in place, and put the strategies and actions in place to reach those goals.
So much great advice. Let's give a big thank you to all of the contributors who shared their hard-earned lessons with us today. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Just awesome.
And we'll also include their LinkedIn profiles in the show notes too, right, Russ?
That's right. And we'd love to hear from you. It's a new year, but if you learned something valuable in 2024 and you'd like to share it with us and you're carrying it into your work this year, just let us know. Reach out to us. Again, contact@ipmadvancement.com or hit us up on social media.
Yeah, just leave a comment on any of our social platforms. You can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and the YouTubes.
Thank you to our listeners. And, whether you've been with us since the beginning or this was your very first episode, thank you so much. We appreciate you and all the work that you're out there doing to make the world a better place.
We have lots of great topics and guests planned for this upcoming season. So subscribe to our feed in your favorite podcast app and follow us on social media. Links are in the show notes.
Thank you to our esteemed producer, Curtis Schmidt, and my co-host and friend, Rich Frazier.
Thank you, Russ. I really appreciate you. And it's great to share the podcast with you again. We've done a lot of solo podcasts in 2024. So it's nice to team back up with you.
It is awesome. And it's so cool that we're now in our 6th year.
They haven't kicked us off yet.
They haven't. Curtis, he just keeps inviting us back. I don't know what it is.
Curtis rocks.
Yep, Curtis rocks. And to you, our listeners, thank you once again. We'll see you next time on the Nonprofit Fundraising Exchange.
That concludes this episode of the Nonprofit Fundraising Exchange. Thanks to our panel for sharing their insights and expertise. If you'd like to learn more about our panel members or any of the organizations or resources featured in this episode, we will include links in the show notes. If you like this podcast, we would love your help spreading the word. First, please subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app so you always know when a new episode is released. Second, forward the episodes you like to friends and colleagues or share them on social media. Word of mouth is one of the best ways you can help us reach more nonprofit professionals like yourself. And if you use Apple Podcasts or Audible, please leave us a review. Positive reviews are how many listeners decide whether or not to try out a new podcast. We appreciate your help. For suggestions on topics, guests, or nonprofit organizations you'd like to hear on the podcast, send an email with the subject heading NPFX suggestion to contact@ipmadvancement.com. For back episodes and more resources like white papers, infographics, and blog articles, please visit the free IPM Advancement Nonprofit Resource Library at ipmadvancement.com/resources. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.